Now, this is a subject that's been really close to my heart for ages. I actually would love to have a super efficient, eco-efficient house. So I met Inês and Luis quite some time ago at a networking event, and it was amazing. Like they were talking about all these incredible things they've been working up in Norway, so they knew what was going on. And every single builder I speak to in the Algarve is like, what? You want to do what? And I just want a house that doesn't cost that much to run, that's efficient, that doesn't have mold, that's just efficient. So anyway, let's chat to them about it. I'm really excited for this conversation, and I hope you are too. Hi guys, well it's so nice to have you on the Algarve Addicts video podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
No, you're welcome. So can you just introduce yourself a little? It's Inês and Luis, and you're in the Algarve in Alvor right now, right?
Correct.
So what do you both do?
We are both architects. We came back to the Alvor in 2016 after being almost 15 years living in Scandinavia, in Oslo. So yes, we moved there and then we decided.
But Inês, let's start with that because I know that you went to the international school in the Algarve. You were born in the Algarve. Why did you attend the international school in the Algarve, not Portuguese school?
Well, I think the reason was mostly my mom. This is mostly a question for my mom. Nevertheless, I know her answer.
Yeah.
You know, my mother, she's from Lisbon, and she moved to the Algarve also because she really enjoyed the region. But she had, especially more than 30 years ago, it was even more secluded, let's say. So she is a travel agent, so she has a kind of a broad understanding of the world, and I guess that's what she also wanted for me, that this was a quality of life to live here in the Algarve. Nevertheless, it was good, as she would put it, like that I would be a person of the world. So to be in a school with diversity, knowing that there's other cultures and ways and insights into things, more than just the local one.
Yeah, it's a good move. And what about you, Luis? I mean, were you born in the Algarve as well, or are you from another part of Portugal?
No, I'm from Porto, the north of the country. My family is actually from the interior north, from the Douro, the winemaking area. So yes, the Algarve for me was something new. It was nothing that like most of the people in Portugal, Algarve was the place to come in, vacation once a year. I do have.
And did you?
But yeah.
And did you come on vacation once a year down to the Algarve?
Yes. Especially when you're a kid and you're dragged by your parents, and Algarve was always the destination. And as I said, I mean, we have some family here, so it was a once a year thing.
So where did you come to in the Algarve when you used to come with your family? Was it Alvor, where you are now?
No, not really. It was more into Armação de Pera, more around that area. We had family in Faro as well, so we used to pass by Faro. But it was more around Armação de Pera.
And I guess Armação de Pera, I know Armação de Pera has changed a lot since those days. I mean, just brand new, beautiful apartments that just some of my guys in my audience were talking about. They just bought a place in the Bayline Apartments. I'm not sure if you know of those things. Fantastic. Really amazing, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different scale, especially when you consider like back in the days as we were talking about what Armação de Pera used to be and what it is now. But I think even if you consider the last 5 years, I mean, the scale of that project is something relatively new to the place.
Yeah, it's massive. It really changes the whole dynamic of the town, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know Inês went to university in Oslo. That must have been a radical change. How did you cope with that?
Well, we both went to Oslo at the same time. Luis was already finished, and I still had my exchange here. Yes, it was exactly that the reason for this choice, that it was radically different. So we call it, it was our most exotic choice at the time.
I mean, I couldn't begin to understand what it'd be like to go from sunny skies to I mean, I've been to Oslo and it was beautiful because we were there in summer, but I know what it's like in winter. I mean, there's hardly any light at all. Huh?
But Nick, you have to consider, I mean, for us, this was a 1 year move. The first ambition was to say, like, okay, we're going to be 1 year away. And, you know, we talked about this. I mean, we're going to have, hopefully, the possibility to travel to most places in Europe, you know, as part of our travels. Where would you go for 1 year that you kind of, you know, it's a one chance to get to know. And yes, Scandinavia was kind of, we're never going to go back there. You know, it's going to be a 1 year thing. We get that year to know a little bit around, and yeah, we know the north. And he ended up being 15 years. But
Well, so then there's a reverse question. What was it like coming back to the Algarve after that? I mean, that must have been mind-blowing, right?
Adventurous.
yeah, you know, the reasons is probably many of that are familiar with you. I mean, the whole climate, and for us, you know, the culture and the food. It's something that we missed. I mean, even though we would come to Portugal quite often while we were there, it's very different to live here. So in a sense, there was all this part of, you know, the culture, the climate, the food, but also for us it was also obviously family. I mean, we both have young kids, so first one was born there, the second one was already born here, and you know, being that we have a bigger part of the family to be together, that was also a big part of it.
And it's a beautiful place to raise children, isn't it? It's an amazing place to raise children. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's more natural for us to go to the beach and pick up shells than go to the woods and pick up berries. So or mushrooms.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what's your working mission here in the Algarve?
I think is a little bit maybe regarding what we were just saying. It's celebrate this territory in a way. I think for us it was very, very important to live for so many years in Scandinavia, and we have grown to be adults there, and all the sort of professionalism was kind of taught to us there, and also the way of collaborating, not only with all the specialities within architecture and engineers and construction, so this collaboration spirit, but also with the client to be constantly like working in teams. I think that was very important throughout these years. But also one thing is also super interesting is that although we have the sunny days here, although we have like this much more opportunity to be outside, I think we've learned much more to celebrate outdoors being in Scandinavia. People really live the outdoor space. People really cope with nature. So to have those learnings and to come back here and see, look, this territory is just so beautiful. There's so much quality of life. Let's celebrate it. Let's make projects where people can actually enjoy and take advantage and live well.
So do you think people traditionally here don't take advantage of the outdoors as much because it's so easily available, and they just don't?
I think it's easy to come up with, you know, if it isn't perfect, then you just, you know, like it's a luxury problem, you know, like if it isn't perfect, then you're just like, well, not today, you know, and we're not going to go, and it's raining, it's a bit cold, you know, it's like, and this is things that, you know, in Scandinavia, like we learn, like there is no bad weather, you know, like you have to go out regardless, so you dress accordingly and you're fine. And this way of understanding that even for us in our profession, the way you design the space, the way you bring the spaces in and out, this is something like the barrier between outside and inside. It's something that in traditional architecture is very strong. There's an inside and there's an outside. And recent developments in technology and sustainability has allowed for that border to be, you know, to be much more wider,
blurred.
And much more blurred. Yes, so you can take advantage of the climate. And I can tell you, like living in Porto, for example, we have so many more days of rain than here in the Algarve. So it's the same country, but just from north to south, the possibilities that open up are very different.
Yeah. There's more thought maybe put into a veranda in Scandinavian that it has been like typically here put so much thought, or like to think about all the microclimate and the wind and the sun, and how are you going to kind of maximize the use of that space all year round and all day around, I think yes, that's something somehow we bring from the north.
I think
And you've certainly done that with your place in Alvor, but we can talk about that in a minute. And I wanted to jump into eco-efficient homes because I never know what to call them, like, passive energy houses or net zero buildings or LEED certified construction. I don't know. But you guys, I mean, talking to you before, you mentioned a term like eco-efficient homes. And that, to me, that just sums up a lot of it, which is great. And so, how do you define an eco-efficient home in layman's terms? And are there any of them around?
Yes, Nick, I think we talked a little bit about that. And the term eco-efficient, it's something that I think it's very connected with, the efficient part has to do with results, right? So it's something that when you're developing a project, you always have to measure. You always have to, for it to be rational, so that you can measure the differences. It has a lot to do with engineering and how, you use more or less energy. You heat more, you heat less. It's a lot about facts. And we recently had our house in an article in Wallpaper where the journalist called it
Climate sensitive.
Climate sensitive. Which for us made much more sense actually, because in our profession, I mean, yes, we do have to deal with all of this, engineerings and all of these things, but our main core, it's about this sensitivity. So I think to call it climate sensitive, for us, it just made much more sense, because it's about designing for the climate that you are. You have today, I mean, luckily we have an array of possibilities of how to use eco-efficiency, from systems to materials. All these things. And then it's like you have this menu, and like, which ones are you going to choose, and what will you do, and what's the most important? And the answer for that is always location, and location means, how the house is directed, how much you can take from the sun, but also the local climate. If you're doing it in Sagres, or if you do it in Vila Real, Sant Antonio, or Tavira, I mean, it's very different things. The humidity, it's different. So the place and the location and the orientation, this is where we get most of our answers. And it has to do with its sensitivity, also in a sensitive way of using things rationally. You don't have to do, many things.
Yeah, or the expression. So I think it makes sense to use the word eco-efficient because, like Luis saying, is like something measurable. And that's well put also from the side of the client, I think, because it's a dialogue with the client, because you want to have not only a nice project but a sound kind of object, a good quality object and property, because you're investing. And in that sense, it's a worth discussion to talk about eco-efficiency. But then the climate sensitive, it's almost like you put it on the expression and on the design, and like Luis saying, the perception of it and how you transform that could only be there.
But I agree with you, and there was one video which actually smacked me in the face once. It was unbelievable. It really shocked me. There was this guy in Arizona. He was an architect. He had built this house, and he was wearing a t-shirt in summer, and he had no energy, no electricity at all, right? And he just relied on thermal mass and all kinds of stuff to heat the house, or to cool the house in summer. And in winter there was snow outside because it was Arizona, right? It was like radical variances in temperature. And he was wearing a t-shirt and there was no heating in the house at all. And I was just absolutely shocked that you could do this passively without having, energy pumped into the house. And I think when we look around and look at all the energy costs these days, and just, I don't know, it just strikes to me, it seems to me that there was a lot of old technology that we've kind of forgotten about, and we've just layered on electricity and air conditioning, and people just aren't being smart about it. And you guys have been really smart about it in your house, in Alvor that we visited, which was fantastic, and it's really lovely to talk about. But have you seen, is there much adoption of this kind of building in the Algarve? Because I haven't seen it.
No, I think most of the people, as you say, it's a two-way discussion. In one hand, yes, technology, we feel like it's the answer for everything. So even when we're trying to create eco-efficiency, we're going to use equipment, we're going to use technology. And that's kind of it's a loop that we get into, because equipment, they need electricity. And yes, as you say, I mean, we can get like solar photovoltaic panels to create electricity, but you're always kind of in this loop of needing electricity to generate or to use less energy. So yes, passive systems for us make all the sense. And the situation you're describing in Arizona, I mean, we're not as radical or as extreme here in Algarve, but we did use the same principles. But this is also a cultural thing, because we see that many clients don't have the culture of using the houses properly. So you forgot, like you say, on the old days, you knew you have to close the window, you have to open at certain times of the day, you have to close the shutter outside, or you have to know how to use the house to control its climate.
Yes.
And nowadays, people just want to push a button. They want to dial a temperature, push a button, and then everything is done for them.
But that's a really good point. Surely the house can actually sense that it's this time of the day, that it's light outside, that there's sun, and it needs to open the windows, and it automatically opens the windows, and you have this whole system which is, like you said, it's climate sensitive. It's actually adapting to the current climate of the day. Do you know what I mean?
And I think behind that, it's always, and it will, I mean, you can automatize everything you want, but it's, in the end, it's up to you. I mean, you're the one that should know.
Have
like,
the sensors.
You have the sensors in you better than anyone else to know, like, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too humid. I mean, or the air seems like, like you enter
Dry.
a house, and when you have all of these climate efficient homes, one of the things, and especially in Scandinavia, that we notice that everything is sort of
Vacuum.
it's like everything is closed. There's no exchange with the outside, because you want to retain the energy, you want to retain, and then you retain the air as well. So it's like you enter the house and you feel like the air is used, like everything is from yesterday,
Yeah, that's true.
And those sensitivity and those, as you say, like those sensors, you're the one that has them, and you're the one that's going to know, like, we need to open a window, you need to change the air, you need to do this. And the houses, people used to know how to do these things, but I think they need to relearn, because now people, it's easier to use air conditioning, to use even the ventilation systems, everything is automatic. And if you want to go into these passive systems, you have to know how to use them.
But I mean, also practically, some people aren't here all the time. A lot of the houses in the Algarve go unused most of the year, and obviously they need to be aired. But if that could be a mechanical thing, it'd be great. I mean, I remember going into like an 8-bedroom mansion villa in Villamora, right on the golf course, and there was mold all over the ceilings, and I was like, wow, I can't believe it. And again, I've seen it. Obviously, the mold problem in the Algarve is massive, and I would imagine that an eco-efficient house or a climate-sensitive house would solve this mold problem. But you're saying it's not really going to happen unless we actually use it properly and we practice what we're supposed to do.
There's two things here. I mean, I think one of the reasons that this sort of pathologies or mold or other things happen, the first reason is not the use, it's the construction. There's something that is called cold bridges. They are completely, I mean, you can't do them in Norway. It happens when you have, for example, a concrete slab that in the wall, instead of going, it's not, the insulation outside is not continuous. So you just have insulation on the walls, but the slab is exposed, the bottom or the side of the slab. So you get a difference in temperature, and that creates condensations. And in countries like Norway, those things it can happen because you get temperatures below freezing, so the condensation then turns into ice, and the ice will expand, and then suddenly the whole system, and the next day it will go even further. So here we know that there's a lot of construction done, especially from the 70s and 80s, where all of these things, people believe that they were building in the Mediterranean, and we are in the Atlantic.
So these are the mistakes, You can do a lot of things, but then there's small flaws here and there, and that's where it shows the mold, because you don't take an holistic kind of approach of the full house and the construction system and what you want to achieve. So that's very important to think it as a full project, as a full thing. The whole execution project, let's say, not only the idea, but all the way to the execution.
But
Okay, so talking about that, talking about the construction and executing it from scratch, is like, how do we go about building a house in the Algarve? What are the steps that you would recommend we follow on a very basic level? Because obviously there's some very, very complicated steps there. But like, how would you go about constructing a house from scratch? Like finding a piece of land, putting a house on it. Is that even possible?
So,
Massive question, right?
so two things. Let's start with the easiest part, like the last part you mentioned, like having the plot and just putting a house there. These days, that's again, it's going back to construction system. Having a building from scratch with traditional bricks and mortar, or to have a prefab, is just a difference of construction system, let's say. So these days, the legislation is the same for both, because it's just a question. It's almost like, are you building in wood or are you building in brick? And this has to do again with being climate sensitive, or being like, or trying to make it unique for some sort of purpose or ambition. So yes, that's one thing. I think, but then going back to like the major steps, what we see sometimes is that actually the architect comes very late in the process. And we would very much advise to consult an architect as early as possible, even if it's just for kind of consultancy. Not to start right away your project, because of course there's a long way to go, but to really understand, like, even the plot, the potential of that plot, because there's different legislations from municipality to municipality. So to understand and align the expectations of the client, the potential of the plot, and even the municipality. They might also have certain expectations, and it's just best to have a dialogue between all the parts right in the beginning. So I think that's one of the key advices would be to integrate as early as possible, to align. And then, yes, the architects in a way can follow you through, more active or less active in this first phase, until you really kind of have a plan to how to design and to go through all the steps of the process.
And one of those major steps is possibly choosing a builder or a building company. I was actually wondering, because we've been building in our house for 10 years now. Every year we do another room, and we find another builder because the builder before wasn't very good. And is there like a list, like a guild or something, or an association of builders in Portugal that you can say, okay, this guy is really good and they've got 5 stars or something? Because I know there is some kind of system, right? Especially when they're talking about construction.
They have a system, but it's more about categories of housing, that how much they are able to do. Okay. You have builders that are not allowed to do, or don't have the license to do, a certain type of projects from a certain value or complexity. But it's not about the quality. And I think for that you have to rely on experience of what's been done, and to actually go and see what they have done.
Yeah.
So before you hire a builder, it's normal. Just ask them, like, what have you done? Can you take me to places? And ask other people rather than themselves, or go and check online what have they built and go and see it.
Yes.
Because most of the problems in construction, when it's because of bad construction, they appear in the first 5 years. All the the weak points will be shown. Go and see what they've done. See something that has 5 years, and you can have a good sense. Or otherwise, yes, if you hire or if you consult with an architect, then he would have some experience and he would know more of these things. We tend to create our own network or our own
shortlist.
Shortlist, yes.
Yeah, and sometimes we blindly, just follow them. Somebody says, "Oh, this guy's a good builder," and you go, "Okay, cool," and then you do, and you use him, yeah. And then it turns out to be really bad sometimes. But I think it's always a risk, and I think the management process, and what I've found in my experience, is just managing builders is probably something that you have to do properly. Maybe employ a manager to actually do it, because the thing is, like, we're homeowners, we don't know much about building. Some of us do, some of us don't. So it's always a struggle. It's hard. Anyway, I've spoken with many people who share the dream of finding a plot of land in a beautiful area and creating like an eco resort. with tents and cabins and stuff. And do you think this is a realistic dream in Portugal? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like it's really, really hard to actually build anything on a land where there's no ruin or no rights.
Well, there is this regulation in Portugal that has, even if it's could be an agricultural or a environmental reserve, and in those areas things are, as you say, much more difficult. But there are many plots that are on what you call urban plots,
which means infrastructure, that they are close to infrastructure.
Yes.
So the tentative is not to have a sprawl, and so like you're saying, like if you have a ruin on a plot, then it's possible that you can actually extend and do something on that plot. And normally the legislation is different if you're building your private house or if you're building with some sort of touristic ambition. And also there you are allowed then to build bigger than actually what you would be allowed in just designing for a private house. So you have to work with those constraints and opportunities in a way.
Have you had any experience of working with those kind of projects in the Algarve?
We are now doing an extension of an eco resort in Lagos. It's being built.
And we're also working on this, but this is a private house in, as you say, like in a countryside, in the middle of nothing.
In a beautiful, hill,
yes,
in a beautiful hill in
Sounds wonderful.
The castle.
Yeah, it's beautiful view. You can see the castle in the distance, and then there's just nothing. And yes, there was an existing ruin there, as there are many. I mean, from that house, you could see a couple of hills with a couple of ruins. So yes, it's not something that I think can be seen as something that is not. We can say it's not possible to build if you don't have a ruin. It depends on the regulations, and those change all the time. So it's just about looking into each case, and as Ines is saying, we have to consult with the municipalities and look at the regulations. Maybe they are more open if things have a touristical ambition, because they know it's going to bring more people to the municipality. So it has to be seen case by case.
Yes, and we are lucky because Algarve is very hilly. So you go around the hill and it feels like you're very far out.
That's true.
In that sense, you don't need to go that far, and you don't want to be that completely alone, let's say. So.
And about this kind of rule about being on one side or the other of the national road, right? Everything from the national road south has a price and has a pressure, but if you go to the north, then it's something completely different. You are in what we call the Barrocal, which is like the what do you define Barrocal? It's the
countryside.
It's between the hills, like Monchique, like the bigger mountain, and the beach. It's the area that can be used for agriculture, and it's a beautiful potential here in Algarve on that area.
Yeah, I think that's the joy, especially obviously around Alvor and around there, but also here around Lulé. You just go like 5 minutes outside of Lulé, and you're in a hill, you're in a valley, and you can feel, like you said, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, but you're 5 minutes away from the town.
What a privilege!
Yeah. So after you guys came back from Scandinavia, I'm not sure if you started this straight away, but you created your home in Alvor. And like I mentioned before, you had us for lunch there. It was fantastic. Can you just talk us a little bit through that? I know it's very difficult because this is just audio only, but we can refer to some of the the magazine articles that have been written about your house. But can you just sort of describe it basically and how you've made use of eco-efficient technologies?
Yes, there's many things. Yes, this is a very good project, and it was also very important for us to break some of the myth that we have been talking. For us, it was very important to be part of this community. We are in the center of Alvor and part of an old community. So it was very important somehow also to get some of the expression, and with a touch of being much more contemporary, but looking into what have been done throughout history. And the local techniques Also because it was important also for us that eco-efficient house shouldn't be that expensive, but so again to understand where are we building and what resources do we have available, and therefore that's the measure point of how much you do with eco-efficiency. It has to do with a good management of resources, and that was very important for us for this house to understand how to build it with what was available somehow around, and all the workshops that we could use from carpentry and steel work and so forth that were local.
And also, I mean, the construction techniques and everything. We wanted to use the house as a showroom, let's say, to clients, because we know it's difficult to believe that you can make a house in Algarve without air conditioning and that with the use that we have here. But we have to show. So if we want to, if we believe in it, we have to do it, and we have to show it. So that was kind of one of the goals. Like, we're going to use the same construction methods that all the houses here have. We're not going to need, special materials and solutions to be able to achieve what we want. It's actually in how you do it. It's using these passive systems that you were talking earlier.
How you design, and again going back to this thing of being very local and celebrating what you have as a plot and what you have as environment around you, and to bring that into the spatial quality, because this is the major value. It's something you are never going to change, is how you adapt the house to the terrain and to the views and to all of these constraints and your own way of living the spaces. And that's where you should put the value, because you can change a sofa, you even can change a kitchen within the time, but this special quality of the room, how are the rooms articulating, and how is the light coming through, and how you feel, the change of light into the rooms, all this kind. How do you feel the other person in the other room, but you are alone and you are together? How does the house feel when there's people coming in, or when you are alone? All these sort of things, those are qualities that only come on this design phase, and that you pay once, in a way, but they will last forever. Everything else you can kind of replace and, like you were saying, refurbish this or that. But if you do the full thought of the house, the articulation of the spaces.
Yeah. Nick, I mean, you've been here and you've seen, we've taken some options ourselves that maybe some clients wouldn't agree, but again, this is what Ines is saying, you design for a person. And in our case, for our family, it made sense that the best view of the house, the place where we know we're going to be living more often, is actually the kitchen and the eating space, and all the living spaces are towards the north side. So this is something like it has to do with the way we live and how we see that we will make most or the better use of it. So yes, I think in the house we have made some sort of very personal choices, but in the end it's something that we are proud to show to clients, and then we hope it will open up possibilities that they had.
And it resonates on people that comes to the house. I think they see those qualities.
Yeah, it resonated for me too. I mean, I just like the flow of air coming from down, like almost from the garage up the staircase up. Is it 3 stories all the way up? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got this central staircase, and then it comes out of the main eating area, like you said, the kitchen, which is an amazing experience. It's just a lovely flow. And there were 2 things that you mentioned to me. I mean, they may seem small, but I thought they were fascinating. That you used fire bricks. I don't know what else to call them in English, but those bricks that you put in the fireplace.
Yeah, it's thermal bricks.
Thermal bricks, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, and it has to do with this, what you described also before about the thermal mass of the project. So when you have, if you imagine a box, and the box is very well closed, that's the first step. The second step is that you create a second box inside, and that second box inside is made out of these thermal bricks, and it's the one that has mass. The outside is just a shell, just protect mechanically and from the heating. The inside is the one that's going to retain the temperature. So those bricks have the ability of absorbing all the temperature it's in the house, even if it's in the winter time. All the walls are warm, and even if you open the house to ventilate, as soon as you close it, all the temperature is it's gained again by the walls. It's putting back the energy, In the winter, in the summer, it's the same thing. If everything is cool and then some hot air comes in, it's immediately absorbed by the walls and this thermal mass. So that's one of the principles that we use here.
And it's so brilliantly simple, isn't it? It's just amazing. It's just naturally equipped.
And again, it's not new. It's not something that it's available now, and people, it's a new technology, and it's a very simple thing, it's bricks on the wall, but it's how you made them. And this sort of knowledge used to be much more common before. There's a reason why, for example, this is a very simple thing, but it's just usually the walls in the traditional houses here were like very thick walls, right? And the thickness of that wall is not necessarily because of structure, that you need all of that to hold the roof. But if you open a window on a 50 centimeter wall, that window will be automatically protected from the sun. Because it creates shade just within that distance of the wall. And nowadays you have materials that can allow you to make walls of like 30 or even less, because it's super tech and everything can be thinner and can be more efficient. But then you are going to end up with walls that are so thin that you're going to have to protect them somehow with another thing on it. So yes, this is things that
And from the outside, it looks very closed because, we are really in the middle of this neighborhood. But then, you come inside and you feel the light is coming from everywhere, and there's a feeling of privacy as well.
And it's another brilliantly simple concept as well, which is just amazing. Like letting the light in winter, but not letting the heat in summer, which is fantastic, just based on the angle of the sun. It's incredible. Super simple. Love it. Excellent. Okay, so that house is amazing, and people. I'll drop a link into the show notes where you can see. It was Wallpaper magazine. You did an article there, and there were some other publications.
The national newspaper Público, and there's a couple of architectural websites where Algarve is being now credited and mentioned.
That's amazing. So congratulations! It's been a very successful project. I think it sounds like it's been amazing. So how do you operate? If somebody wanted to build a home with you, do you actually deal with private homes, or do you just work on big developments? How do you operate here in the Algarve as architects?
So Algarve Architects, we are Algarve in Portugal, and Algarve we have all this knowledge from every scale, and we still work in connection very much also with Scandinavia. And we bring this experience and we share all the knowledge. So we work from master planning to a villa, a family home. And so every project is its own story. And so we do have the resources to work and all sorts of scales. And we enjoy it very much because they all bring different challenges and different relations also with a client. So here in Portugal, we have been mostly doing or focusing on serviced accommodation. So it can range from hotels, eco resorts, and student housing, senior living, and family homes, like we were saying, because we really enjoy this very close relation and testing, because this is a sort of project that becomes a little laboratory, and it involves very much the client on the other side.
And you try and introduce eco-efficient technologies in every single house, or is it sometimes you say that if you want to work with you guys, you've got to have an eco-efficient house? Is that it?
Well, it's our principles. It's like it's something that we don't. It's not an add-on to a project. It's not. You can have a house, or you can have an eco-efficient house, and you just add this on top. So it's like you say, all the passive systems. It's the way it works is on the design of the house. So if we could choose to make where to make the windows and how to protect them and how to, the construction system, how does it work, we will always choose to do an eco-efficient or a climate-sensitive house. And then it's up to you. If you feel like you want to add in some air conditioning because it's up to you. It's not. But that's a principle that we take in how we approach, because it has to do also with economical sustainability. Sustainability in itself. So we try to optimize the resources of the clients in the way that they get the most of it.
Yes, I think we feel most successful when we are able to frame your decisions in a way. We are here because in the end the project is different, not because it's our project, but because it's your project, and therefore we should actually help you through the way and frame the best decisions for you. And that's also great for us because it's a constant input kind of the client is, look, this way or this way because of this or that, and we keep building the project with the client in that sense of framing the decisions.
I mean, personally, what I think is the dream house for me is to actually have a house that doesn't require any money to run it. You know what I mean? So you can just have, and is that possible? Do you think it's possible to actually do that?
Well, it's strange to say this, but the most eco-efficient thing you can do right now in Algarve, and I think anywhere else in the world, is to be connected to the networks. To be by yourself, you're going to have to kind of, for water, for example, you're going to have to drill a hole and make use of water that it's from everyone. And you know the problem of water here in Algarve, and one of the reasons is because in the last decades people have been drilling and using water without any control and in a very inefficient way. And if you are connected to the network, then there is an optimization, then there is a system, and it's the most efficient way of using the resource. So yes, we are not I'm not very, or I'm a bit critical about people that go into the countryside and just, I'm going to make use of everything here around me, and that's the most efficient way. It isn't, and it's not the most eco-friendly as well. But yes, make use of, sun. The sun is still free, and we're not in shortage of that. But water, for example, it is a problem, and
wind.
Waste disposal is the same thing. I mean, it's better to be connected with a system that can manage your waste disposal than just to do it in the middle of the countryside. Mm-hmm. So I think there needs to be a balance here about how better to use the natural resources, as you say, and that could be done in the middle of a forest or it can be done in the middle of a village. You still have natural resources and how to use them, as you said, like the sun, the ventilation. You can make the best use of it, but not necessarily to say that.
Just keep a collective responsibility.
Yes, I think that kind of there needs to be a balance somewhere.
Yeah, but as always, we can always talk for hours and hours and hours when I meet you guys. So I just want to thank you so much. And, it really is helpful to understand that these technologies are available in the Algarve. Not technologies, but this way of thinking is available in the Algarve. And hopefully more and more architects and more builders will start adopting these procedures, whatever you want to call them. So, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Nick. It was a pleasure.
Algarve Addicts.